for that wonderful introduction. Kathy, I can assure you I am not indefatigable, or however you pronounce it. In fact, I was completely exhausted. I took about 8 months off. I hadn't taken off exactly, I was writing a book, but I took it off activism after November, because after the G20 in Toronto, which was very stressful. And I was exhausted, and I took almost 8 months off, which was great, because now I'm really rested up. And it's important that I be out there defending Occupy Wall Street, so that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to talk a lot about Occupy today because of the crisis that we're facing here in Vancouver, but also because I think it's the most important thing that's ever happened in my life. You know, the other day, Noam Chomsky said, said it yesterday, I waited my whole life to see this. And that's true for me. When I saw the video I'm going to show you, I started to cry a little bit, you know, but that's like, these days, that doesn't take much. But after a while, I started weeping. I was on Skype with Velcro Ripper, who did the video, and I started to weep. And I said, you know, I'm very hopeful I would see this in my lifetime, but I really never thought that I would. And so that's how important I think Occupy Wall Street is, despite whatever problems they're having here. And so I want to talk about that because I think that it's important that we each ask ourselves, what can I do to help? What can I do to help this movement grow? But I was asked to talk about Rabble and the history that brings us to Occupy Wall Street, which is a history of many things, but one of them is the changes in the internet and the relationship between those changes and the development of new movements. And so I have a bit of a PowerPoint. Well, why don't we start with this anyway, because this is the video I told you about, so now you don't have to wait to see it. We'll start with watching this video. Velcro Ripper, who some of you may know, he's an award-winning filmmaker, comes from here, comes from Gibson's. And he did this video. He's living, it so happens he's living in Brooklyn. He's kind of a nomad, Velcro. You never know where he's going to be living, but right now he's living in Brooklyn for a couple of years. And so he's been down on Wall Street every day. And one of the days, the leaders of the Egyptian Tahrir Square, the young people who started it, arrived in Wall Street, and Velcro was there. And he did this film. And we'll start with that, and then I'll go to my presentation.
أنا بس بصور لكم فيديو عشان أقول لكم رسالة واحدة. عايزين ننزل يوم 25. لو لسه عندنا كرامة ولسه عايزين نعيش كإنسان وكبني آدمين في البلد دي، لازم ننزل يوم 25. هننزل نطالب بحقنا.
Keep on. You have very strong. You have been very strong, and you have to be more strong. And you have to keep on in your message and your struggle. So on. You have to get your freedom.
But the revolution is not only the beginning.
Indonesia.
Indonesia.
And then it came to Egypt. And then it went to Yemen.
Then it went to Yemen.
And then Libya.
And then Libya.
And then Syria.
And then Syria.
And then Spain.
And then Spain.
And then Greece.
And then Greece.
And it's going to the US.
And it's coming to the US.
And every country.
Every country.
In the world.
In the world.
That suffers.
What would you say?
To people in this country.
To people in this country.
Who believe that things will never change.
Who believe that things will never change.
As long you always say
that
change will never come,
change will never come,
nothing will happen.
nothing will happen.
You have to believe it in yourself.
أنا نزلت وكتبت إن أنا بنت وهنزل ميدان التحرير وأقف لوحدي. هرفع يافطة يمكن الناس تحس. كتبت رقم يمكن الناس تنزل. محدش نزل. هتلاقي جاي في السجن وعشرات من البلطجية وظباط.
And in Egypt, we started with a few people. And then we become thousands. And then we become millions.
انزل البيت، ابعت مسجات لاصحابك، اكتب على النت في كل حته، وعي. انت عارف الدايره بتاعتك، عمارتك لوحدها واصحابك وقرايبك، بس قول لهم انزل معايا. نزلهم 5 ولا 10، لو كل واحد فينا نزل 5 و10 ونزل بيهم لميدان التحرير او ميدان اللازوغلي او في اي حته عشوائيه حتى، ويتكلم الناس ويقول لهم بقى كفايه.
What's the first word? Ashab! Yurid! Escort! Enizam!
الشعب يريد النظام.
الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام.
We are now in a love story. Who can believe before that we are Egyptian and American, one hand together in Wall Street? Who could imagine this before? Now we are just one word and one objective in Tahrir Square, in Wall Street, and everywhere.
That's the greatest love story on earth.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beltro is working on a film, the third in his trilogy, called Evolved Love, and now he's going to call it Occupy Love. Okay, I've had a very stressful morning because I spilled coffee on my laptop, and I have a book deadline on November 15th, so I've sorted it all out, but I was very stressed out, so I'm sort of on the edge, so nobody be mean to me, okay? Okay, so first of all, I want to say how happy I am to be here. I was the keynote speaker for the first Media Democracy Day, which was only a few months after we started rabble.ca 10 years ago. And I just want to introduce Kim Elliott, who's the current publisher of rabble.ca, has been doing a spectacular job since I stopped doing it in 2005, I think it is. And also Derek O'Keefe, who is a former editor of rabble.ca and writes wonderful pieces. And anybody who thinks rabble.ca is an Ontario operation just prove to you that we're not at all. Actually, most of our staff are here in BC, right? Or at least 50-50. So it's one of the things about having a virtual operation. You don't really exist anywhere exactly. So, and Kim travels everywhere. So, and when I was here, you know, it's good to look back 10 years to realize how different everything is. So I want to talk about where it all started in terms of social media and internet media. And it started in Seattle in 1999. And it started, well, it looks like most people here remember Seattle, right? Yes? No? How many people remember Seattle? Okay, because lately I was speaking to the Gen Y Bring Your Boomer thing last week. I was actually here last week too. In between I went to Wolfville. The Gen Y thing, and I asked how many people remember Seattle, and it was like 10. So you remember Seattle. It was the beginning of the anti-globalization movement, or at least a visible part of it. And at that time, there was a indie media center in Seattle. And they set up an indie media website, which, maybe click on that, yeah, which still actually looks sort of like it looked back then, and which is surprising because it doesn't look too good. But anyway, in my humble opinion. But anyway, it was the first time that we could actually post directly to the internet. It was, you could post videos, you could post photographs, you could post what we now call blogs, you could write right on it. And that was something entirely new. Couldn't do that otherwise. And so indie media really innovated a lot of what we now call social media. And in fact, I found out, I was at a network politics seminar in Berkeley a couple of years ago, and found out that a lot of the people who started indie media, who coded indie media, went into almost every other major, some corporate, some nonprofit web programming, like, you know, Wikipedia and Craigslist, which are nonprofit, and Facebook, and all of that. That indie media was the start and the innovation, and it came out of a struggle. I want to say that because I think it's important to understand that. It was produced out of a struggle, out of the needs of a struggle and a movement. And ever since, there's been a very close connection, even though a lot of the media, like Facebook and Twitter, have been developed in the corporate world. Nevertheless, there's been a close connection between social media, independent online media, and social struggles. The way that the story of Rabble is that I was working for the CBC, and they asked me to write a column for their website, which they had just put up. I think it was in 97 or 98. 98, I think. And just think about that, like CBC started their website in 1998. And they asked me to write a column for it, so I said, sure. That was before the brass got hold of the website. This is when they still, you know, they didn't think it was very important, so they let the person who was editing the website do what they wanted, so they asked me to write for it. And, and I wrote, my first column was on the war in Kosovo, and I was against the war in Kosovo, as I am against pretty well, I am against every war. And I just don't think you can bomb people into democracy. It's a quirk that I have. So I wrote against the war in Kosovo, and I got 250 emails. Now that sounds like nothing, but at the time I was writing columns for the Ottawa Citizen, for the London Free Press, and if I got 10 letters to the editor, it was a lot. And I got 250 emails from all over the world, including Kosovo. They were intelligent, they were taking up points that I'd made, either agreeing or disagreeing. It was amazing. So I got the idea that this would be a really good medium for a left-wing newspaper, which is how we thought of it at the time. And I traveled a lot around the country speaking, so each place I went, I asked people who were into alternate media, because of course we've had alternate media for a very long time. The Georgia Strait here, we had, there was another newspaper, more left, a sort of left-wing newspaper here, can't remember what it's called now. And we had right across the country different alternate media. And in fact, I was involved in trying to start an independent progressive newspaper, and it wound up being way too much money for us to do it. So when I asked people who were into alternate media to organize a meeting to talk about how to do this, whether people thought it was a good idea, I said, I want you to make sure that half the people there are under 30. Because people who were under 30 at the time were much more in tune with what was happening online. And they all said the same thing, which is if it's not interactive, we're not interested. And of course, I realized myself the power of the internet was the interactivity of the internet. And so when I came back to Toronto, I got together with a number of people, including at that time Judy McDonald, now she calls herself Judy, was a journalist. Tom Wacom was a journalist for The Star. A lot of other people, and the key person was Mark Sermon, because he had the technical know-how, and he's now the head of the Mozilla Foundation. And we started Rabble.